Surveys tell us that about 20% of Canadian youth are affected by a mental illness or disorder, but it's not so easy to diagnose. The teenage years especially are so tumultuous. My guest today went through it with her own daughter and uses what she learned to help others. Sherry Stahl, I'm so glad that you could join us today.
It's great to be here, Cheryl.
Now, looking back, you realize now that your daughter, Shelby, started dealing with anxiety at a very young age, but you didn't recognize it as such, obviously not being an expert. What was she going through?
Well, I think we joke about it now, but I remember she was probably in grade 2. She had just finished grade 2, and I put her to bed, and all of a sudden I could hear her crying in her bedroom just a few minutes later. And I went back, and she literally had just finished grade 2, and she was crying because she was worried about who would be her teacher for grade 3 and what friends would be in the class. And I know kids can have those fears, but those were common for us. Those were constant, that Shelby would, have that anxiety about things going on in her life, but it was a serious fear for her. But seeing those signs crop up when she was very young, but by the time that she was in grade 5, they started to become more severe. And by grade 5, we started counseling for Shelby actually here at Bay Bridge. And she, by grade 5 or 6, started having panic attacks, very serious panic attacks. And just the scariest thing for a parent, I've never experienced those myself, and I didn't quite know how to handle them. I didn't know at first what was going on, and realizing that they were panic attacks. So those were the beginning signs that I saw Shelby going into depression.
And of course, as she got older, that did go into depression. And
yeah.
At the same time, you were going through a painful period in your life. So, is it hard for a parent to understand what's happening with their daughter because you didn't know? And then on top of it, you're so busy dealing with what's going on in your own life. How do you sort that out?
That's really difficult. And I think it was hard for Shelby with the turmoil that was going on in our home at the time. That definitely brought out more of those anxieties and caused more fears because of the instability in our home and everything that was going on. So it was really difficult for her. And as a parent, I was trying to get her the help and taking her to doctors and counseling and things, but I wasn't healthy myself, emotionally healthy at all at the times when Shelby was, at first I think it was just the anxiety, but oftentimes when anxiety is left untreated, uncared for, it turns into depression. And so that's what happened with Shelby, that progression, so that by grade 9, you couldn't get her out of bed. It was difficult, so difficult. But it really took me getting emotionally healthy for Shelby to be able to get healthy. And I'm so thankful that there are such great counselors and help out there for us that you can. But that's a really great first step for a parent who has a kid in, either struggling with anxiety or depression, that you make sure you're healthy yourself.
That's so hard, but I know it's what they say if a plane is going down, put your oxygen mask on first and then put it on them. But your instinct is no, it's everything for your child, right?
Yeah.
It must have been hard to go get help for yourself when you're like, but she's drowning.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that is the best example that you can think of is on a plane. And you can't help someone if you don't have it to give. So as a parent, I had to get emotionally healthy in order to be able to help Shelby.
So there's signs that you can look for. And it's hard. Like I said, the teenage years, it's a form of craziness. Like I remembered I wouldn't volunteer to go back to those years. And most people wouldn't, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
But give us some of the signs that we can look for.
Okay. We're just going to talk, some of the really key signs. Isolation is such a big tip-off. And like you said, there's so many signs, and if your kid has one of these signs, don't be thinking your kid has depression or anxiety, but it's when these become patterns of behavior. But isolation is one. My daughter would spend hours, it started off with, in her room, just being by herself, not wanting to be with friends, but then it got to the point that it was weeks in her bedroom. And really, really that's sad. But when they isolate and pull back and don't want to be with friends first, and then sometimes it might not even be, they don't even want to be hanging around with the family, and their circle gets smaller and smaller, And a lot of times for boys, you'll see they're more, playing video games, and they're just zoning out by themselves playing video games. That can be a common thing there.
Okay, so another one is agitation and anger. So what is that like?
A lot of times people think if you're looking for someone that's depressed, you're waiting to see someone who is very sad, and that they're always talking about suicide. And I think if you're waiting for that, you've waited too long. Teen depression, there definitely is sadness, but it is more commonly experienced or noticed by agitation and anger. And that was definitely experienced with us in the circumstances with Shelby. But agitation and anger, and boys will really get into a lot of fighting a lot of times. So.
There's more. We're kind of running out of time, so I'm just going to go through obsessive fears. So that's what you talked about, that anxiety that she had, excessive sleep, when you're isolating yourself, sometimes you're sleeping all the time, and reoccurrent illnesses. These are just a few. We're going to have all of them listed at 100huntley.com. If you go to this interview, it'll be there. Bell Let's Talk Day is on Wednesday. That is a day they're trying to destigmatize mental illness. It's so important. I have a friend who is dealing with these things and stopped getting help because of the shaming of his friends.
And it's so sad because I look at where my daughter is now and doing so well in university, succeeding, working, able to get up early in the morning. She actually had a job and she had to get up at 5:30 in the morning to work. Just doing so well. There is hope out there, and if you get help, it is amazing what your child's future can be.
And her help was a combination of medication and counseling. It wasn't one or the other, right?
No.
And now she's off medication, doing well, so it's that self-care, learning how to deal with her fears, all of those skills.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. There's so much more we can unpack. I know we'll unpack more on our website at 100huntley.com. Thanks for coming here and just sharing a little bit of your story.
Thanks for having me, Cheryl.
Thanks. And if you are dealing with some issues at home, it could be your depression, could be one of your children, give us a call. We'd love to support you and help you and give you any resources that we can. And the biggest resource, of course, is talking to God and asking Him for His help, because we cannot do it on our own. I know that was a big part of Sherry's journey. Give our prayer lines a call if you can.